Wow. My eyes, if they could smile, they were throughout this entire movie. Valerian, the city of 1,000 planets. The new Luc Besson movie that came out. I think this is his most recent one since Lucy. I can't recall if he'd released anything in between this and Lucy a couple of years back, but yeah, this visually, I want to say right out of the gate, visually this film had to win me over, because I kind of felt, based off of trailers and based off of what I read with regards to this film and the source material, I really wasn't going into this movie expecting epic grand storytelling. I mean, it certainly reaches for that, but I wasn't going into it expecting to be moved so much by an original plot, let's say, or really compelling leads or characters based off of who the leads are in this movie. I was hoping that this could win me over with its creativity and imagination when it came to its production design and visual scope, and it certainly did that. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites of the year, but it's an enjoyable enough film, and even where it lacks in other areas, at least it's not like something like, for example, Transformers: The Last Knight, which I finally saw, where you have epic grand visuals taking place in these robot battles and everything like that, but the plot and characters do everything they can to derail that enjoyable experience for you. Here, at least, the very standard characterizations and plots don't annoy the shit out of me. So I'm perfectly fine with all of this pomp and pageantry and beautiful like special effects and technique basically holding up a very average sci-fi story. If you're gonna go see this movie, go for the purely visual aesthetic of it and just have a blast. Like, go see this in the theaters if you just enjoy watching really grand spectacle that works well. Like, this is some of the best CGI combined with practical effects combination I've seen in a while that really does it well without giving away the trick or giving away the wink to the audience of where the trick lies. And I feel that's always been a strong suit with regards to Luc Besson movies, is he deftly balances spectacle, whether it's clearly a special effect blended in seamlessly with the actual on-screen presentation. I still enjoy a lot of the work he did in stuff like Fifth Element, which this will get a lot of comparisons to Fifth Element. I mean, rightly so. It feels like a spiritual successor or sort of a spiritual expansion of a lot of the stuff that he did in Fifth Element. Yeah, it's just kind of a continuation of that, and I enjoy Fifth Element. I enjoy it a lot. No, not just for the spectacle, but for how he blends a lot of different things in there that work in some degree or another to make a cohesive whole. Like the epic grand storytelling. He tries for it. Does it always pay off? Probably not. But it's complemented at least by actors in basically nothing roles, but giving a hell of a lot of personality and performance into their roles. Comedy, some comedy that really works. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it's the failure of that comedy which makes it hilarious in that particular circumstance. And like I said, everything balanced out with this grand spectacle of other worlds and all these different city and creature designs. A lot of that's here in Valerian, and I was really digging on that a lot. The opening got me right away, because it opens up with kind of the formation of the space station high above Earth and the expansion of that to incorporate all the many cultures of Earth, and then over the next 1,000 or so years talks about how other alien life forms make contact and they add to this space station as well, till it's almost its own planet. And then Rutger Hauer tells us that space station has to go into its own orbit, or it has to set a trajectory away from Earth, otherwise it might obliterate Earth. So they got to be sent out on their own, traversing space, this giant conglomerate of humans and alien life forms and robots and everything like that. And that introduction, set to Space Oddity, was kind of a fun introduction to this movie. I really was digging on the style of this film pretty quick. And then from there, I kind of had this feeling of like, okay, maybe that's the highlight and it's not going to get any better than this stylistically. Then it spends, I want to say, a good 10 minutes with these humanoids on this planet and what happens to them. You've seen hints of it in the trailer. Something happens, a catastrophe comes to their paradise, but you don't go into the catastrophe or the action right away. You get into establishing this paradise that these beings inhabit, and you get a little bit of sense of what they do with their day and the culture and stuff, and make you kind of endear to this species right away before something terrible happens. So when something terrible does happen, there's a little bit of an emotional resonance there for me, because Luc Besson spent a good deal of time establishing an environment and a culture and a species that you can get right away. And then even as the movie continues on, the story itself, like I said, it is a very basic story. You can kind of pick out where certain plot elements or plot beats are going to occur. Like, you're going to pick out what's really going on, who's a traitor, or, you know, who's the big mwahaha villain in this. But I was okay with that, because like I said, at least it didn't clamor for my attention too much. It wasn't taking away from the beauty of what was taking place on the screen for me. It wasn't being overly offensive or annoying, when it very easily could have. There were points where I kind of like, okay, you're teetering a little bit, but you haven't gone into full Jar Jar territory yet, or you haven't gotten to full Skids and Mudflap territory. There's nothing inherently annoying about the characters or the plot of this movie. About the only thing that I consider to be a detractor, for some probably, is the two leads. It's not necessarily to say they're god-awful or anything like that, but they seem very miscast. The leads are Valerian, who is Dane DeHaan, who you might know from Chronicle and The Place Beyond the Pines, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And Cara Delevingne plays Laureline, his partner. They're human federal agents for this space station, or the Human Federation, or whatever. And you might know her from Paper Towns, Suicide Squad. She hasn't quite won me over yet with any of her movie choices. Dane DeHaan, at least he's been in stuff like Chronicle and Place Beyond the Pines. I'm like, I know this guy's capable of turning in good performances. Cara Delevingne, she's not bad, but she hasn't wowed me with anything yet, and unfortunately this movie did nothing to wow me still. They feel a little out of place, especially when they get into the moonlighting stuff. And what I mean by that is the will they, won't they, there's sexual tension here between the two, or you can sense the sexual tension. You don't have to sense it so much as they flat out explain the sexual tension to you in their introduction. Like, in the script, it isn't one of his strongest scripts, I feel. And I know he's adapting it from a French comic book, which I'm not familiar with the Valerian and Laureline comics. So if anyone is an expert on those comics, and if you can clarify for me that, oh no, that's just how they are in the actual comics, fine. I guess he's staying true to the source material, but just based off of this movie, they were the weakest link in this whole chain. Was not necessarily their performance in regards to the movie overall, but especially their dynamic together. There's not really a lot of chemistry between these two, which is a detractor when they spend a lot of time explaining their chemistry and why they work together so well when they really don't, when the screen's telling me different. Dane DeHaan, he feels miscast they both feel way too young for these roles. And like I said, maybe that's the way it is in the actual books. Maybe they are supposed to be portrayed as kind of these fresh-faced youngsters, but the entire time I'm watching this, he is channeling speed Keanu Reeves. That's what I was thinking the entire time, was like, that's who I see in this role, is that degree of Keanu Reeves' performance here. Like, he's got almost a Keanu Reeves whoa thing going throughout his entire performance. Like, he's like, come on, Lorelai, we gotta stop them. Like, it's that degree of inflection, and I want to say the investment that he puts into the performance. It was really harkening back to his turn in Speed for me quite a bit. Or kind of like his turn in Point Break. That's what I was really getting from Dane DeHaan here, was like an early 90s, mid-90s Keanu Reeves performance, which could have been fine. It was working fine for me when it was focused on the central plot. But when he has to work with Cara Delevingne in this moonlighting scenario here, where they have back and forth and they're trying to have witty repartee with each other, it was bringing me back to a lot of that Avengers movie, the non-Marvel Avengers movie with Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman as Emma Peel and Steed, where it's a lot of witty banter that's supposed to pose for emotional or sexual tension between the two, and it doesn't come off like there's emotional or sexual tension between the two, because they just don't resonate with each other as counterparts, be they tactical counterparts with regards to the action sequences, or in some cases in this film, the romantic side of things. I don't buy that these two are romantically attracted to one another. It feels kind of like I'm watching two high schoolers at a school play. Whenever they have dialogue back and forth about like, oh, you're different, Lorelai. You know, I only want to have you in my life. You're the only one on my playlist. Because, as she likes to establish in exposition dialogue in their introduction, he's a player. He has like walls full of his female conquests on there. And she's like, I am not going to be like those other co-workers of yours. I am different. And I'm going to explain to you and the audience why I'm different. Because clearly, we've had this conversation before, but I feel we need to have it again for the sake of a possible audience that's watching us. It doesn't feel natural, their introduction with regards to their characters and with regards to their relationship to each other in this movie. It doesn't feel natural at all. Like, this is clearly a conversation they've had before. They're just having it again for our benefit. So, I mean, I found a little bit of amusement at that, but at least they weren't grating, I should say. Because in a lesser film, like a Transformers movie, where you'd have characters re-explaining things that probably have already been explained to them in universe or in story, but they're just re-explaining it to you for the sake of you're the audience and you need to be filled in. In a Michael Bay movie, I could see that being annoying as shit, because it would be some dumbass comic relief, or like Mark Wahlberg in this latest Transformers movie, where I bought his stupid badass stuff in Age of Extinction, but then, sorry, this is becoming like a Last Night review almost. In Last Night, he finally gave in to being kind of a nuisance. Like, I could see that annoying me and taking me way, way out of the movie-going experience in that film. Here in Valerian, those moments are there, and they are very, very obvious exposition dumps to keep you, the audience, engaged with what's going on plot-wise, but it wasn't infuriating to me. Like, their sexual tension, their chemistry is not there, or it's wildly misconstrued to various degrees, but at least it was kind of amusing to me. It wasn't taking me out of the experience, because at least it would be followed up by some cool visual of them in this marketplace in another dimension that harkens back to the city Bruce Willis lives in Fifth Element, except just greatly expanded upon. Like, this is a market that has millions of streets and stuff like that, and you can only access it through viewing through these special goggles. This is beautiful batshit. Like, if you're a fan of beautiful batshit movies, this is the one for you, because it's got a lot of stuff in this. And a lot of stuff that works well. Like I said, there's that marketplace in another dimension, which is just this grand spectacle. You have this otherworldly, like, awesome beach that these humanoids inhabit that's beautiful to behold. You have ridiculously cheap looking sets at times, which was working for me a little bit because I love schlock. You have the command center for the Human Federation, which looks like it was taken right out of Space Mutiny. And to complement that, a lot of the creature effects are either like full-on Abe's Odyssey type looking creatures, or you'll have practical prosthetics or costuming, which is cool looking. Like, you have these in the opening montage, you have these aliens that I just remember very distinctly as being like these giant goldfish in like a Krang-like body coming up to shake the hands of the humans. And I don't know why that was the first visual that stuck out to me, but I'm like, there's something I haven't seen before. Robots that just look like giant versions of Tom Servo. Like, there's just, it's randomness and weird. You'll have alien Huey, Dewey, and Louie accompanying Cara Delevingne on a side mission in order to get to Valerian. It's wacky and out there, but at least it wasn't annoying. And because it wasn't annoying, it made it all the more enjoyable when stupid shit happens. It's enjoyably stupid. It really is. It gets into that point there where I didn't care much for the plot. It didn't bother me, but I pretty much knew how this was going to go down. By the time they get into the main point of the plot, which is Valerian and Laureline had to save the commander, played by Clive Owen, from these humanoids, you pretty much can figure out where this story is going and what's going to happen. But you're along for the ride, because you'll get not just wacky visuals and imaginative stuff taking place, you'll get performances that are straight up cartoony as hell, but you're appreciative of it because you recognize the actor doing it. You'll have Ethan Hawke basically playing a street pimp in this, who's channeling a little bit of Chris Tucker from Fifth Element here and there. Just a little bit more of a reserved version of that character. You'll have Rihanna, who she's not much of an actress, but it looks like she's at least having a ball with this character as this shapeshifter who's basically the blues singer from Fifth Element, to the point that she becomes this blue squid-like thing that helps out Dane DeHaan at certain points in the movie. But then her name is Bubble. So there's a really emotional scene where Dane DeHaan's like, "You're the only friend I've got right now, Bubble." And she has to, like, Rihanna has to relegate herself to saying, like, "What's your name?" "It's Bubble." But her introduction's like really flashy, really cool. She's changing costumes left and right, and it's seamless. Like, you know, part of your brain knows this is CGI taking place, but Luc Besson has always had a good eye for, like I said, balancing out the spectacle with the narrative flow, that he tricks your brain into buying it for that split second. So when she's in her introduction here, and she's doing like this burlesque performance, where she changes from the burlesque costume to like a naughty nurse costume, to schoolgirl outfit, to weird 70s hippie with a fro look, to Halle Berry's Catwoman. This is all happening in the movie. It's seamless, and your mind buys it for that split second, and you're just in awe of like, oh my god, this is glorious garbage. And so I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. It was enjoyable on that level. But like I said, the plot's very by the numbers, and I'd say the biggest attractor is the lead performances when they have to do their will they, won't they stuff. Spoilers, they will in the end. For as much as that stuff happens, and I did kind of check out whenever I could feel Cara Delevingne and Dane DeHaan start to get into their, well, you know, I could have handled that. Oh, yeah, it looks like you so had it under control. Well, don't tell me you don't need saving every once in a while. It's like, if anyone needs saving here, it's you, Valerian. Like, to that effect. As soon as they start getting into that stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to check out until the next space lizard thing shows up. But thankfully, it's not really that bad. And it, like I said, it's not like grating on your nerves. If you're a fan of this type of grandiose, just over-the-top visual spectacle that Luc Besson is capable of pulling off, with actually some pretty decent action in it, I'd recommend this movie. To see in theaters, especially the 3D was... My eyes, like, they hurt a little bit, but I'm appreciative of it because there was a lot of just really well done 3D work in this. This would be one of those movies I'd recommend seeing in 3D if you want. You're not going in it for anything of real substance with regards to a plot. And performances, with the exception of the two leads, are fine. Like I said, Ethan Hawke's giving his all in his little role. Clive Owen is perfectly serviceable here. John Goodman voices basically Rey's boss from Force Awakens in this, and he's okay in the little bit he got there. And then even when it's not focused on the romance stuff, Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne are okay. I'd say Dane DeHaan a little bit more because at least he's trying, like I said, harkening back to Keanu Reeves in the 90s for this, and that was just entertaining to listen to. Cara Delevingne has some funny moments here or there, but she's a little too wooden. But it's not a nuisance, at least. So, I mean, it's definitely not going to be on my best of yet. It got me in that visual sense, and that's perfectly fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. I might have a Dunkirk video log up tomorrow. I'm going to try to go see Dunkirk tomorrow, too, because that's the one thing is, like, next door to me, I could hear all the... So, visually, I got an overload today with Valerian. I'm pretty sure tomorrow, audio-wise, I will be way overstimulated. So if you see me in a video log with my ears bleeding, it's probably because I went to go see Dunkirk. See ya.